Tonight, Republican lawmakers appear to be leaning towards supporting so-called red flag laws that would help authorities take guns away from people who are believed to be an imminent threat. The Dayton shooter's ex-girlfriend tonight speaking out on the signals that he gave to her and others.
The yellow flags. The first one was our very first date when he showed me the shooting of the synagogue, which was in the news. On the outside looking in, it would normally look like red flags, but given the fact that he was a psychology student and he always talked about it from a psychological standpoint, it was like weird because I'm not into that, but it wasn't that scary or creepy.
So let's bring in the Washington Times online opinion editor, Cheryl Chumley, and journalist Andy No. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So listen, let's talk about these red flag laws because a number of states, I think 17 now have them, and they give some access for people to be able to go before a judge or law enforcement and make an argument that someone's guns need to be taken. There are big concerns about due process. I asked GOP Senator Lindsey Graham about that yesterday because he's being supportive of some of these measures. Here's what he said as to the due process concerns.
There has to be an imminent threat of harm to oneself or to others. It can only be the police, can go to a judge. The gun owner can come in and defend themselves, and the government has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that the person is disturbed. And if that test is met, they can seize the guns and get the person the help they need.
Cheryl, does that sound reasonable to you?
You know, Shannon, on surface, it does sound reasonable, but I have several problems with these red flag laws. And first and foremost, I think they're constitutionally shaky. It kind of reminds me of what Barack Obama did toward the end of his administration with trying to use mental fitness of Social Security recipients to restrict their access to guns. And it makes me wonder, why are conservatives seeming to go down this same path that Obama did? Another issue I have with it is that who decides who's mentally fit enough to own a weapon or purchase a weapon? The government, a government committee? If psychiatrists are in charge, you have to remember these are the same psychiatrists who have been claiming Trump from long distance is mentally unfit to be president. So I have serious concerns about the government or the people who would be in charge of making these decisions.
Yeah, and you heard from the shooter in Dayton, his ex-girlfriend at the beginning of this segment. Another former classmate of his was quoted in the Wall Street Journal. The headline of the piece is "Portrait of a Dayton Shooter: Uncontrollable Urges and Violent Talk Couched as Jokes." This former classmate says everyone kind of kept an eye on him but didn't do anything. You know, Andy, looking at some of the more of the reporting that we have, there were a lot of red flags with this guy. And yet, as we've seen in so many cases, nothing came together to stop him from legally buying these firearms.
Yeah, so the FBI earlier today had announced that they're going to do an investigation into the violent ideologies that this suspect explored before carrying out his attack. He did not leave behind a manifesto like the El Paso shooter did, but if you look on what was up of his social media history, which was extensive, he expressed a lot of support for Antifa causes, individuals, and accounts. And just recently, he praised the Tacoma ICE facility bomber, who was an Antifa militant, as a martyr.
Yeah, and with that in his background, I mean, Cheryl, would those things, though, have been enough under some of these red flag laws to move the needle at all as far as going to a judge or making an argument? I mean, it seems impossible to track everybody's social media. There are millions and millions of users out there posting, you know, dozens of times in a single day sometimes.
And you point to a great problem. I mean, who knows? It's easy to look back now that the incidents have happened, that the devastations have occurred, and say, well, these red flag laws certainly could have saved these innocent lives that were lost. But we don't know that. And the thing is, in this country, and we need to come at all Second Amendment discussions from this premise. In this country, as American citizens, our rights to self-defense come from God, not government. So when the government comes along with plans and proposals and policy suggestions and so forth to restrict our access to those weapons, we need to make sure that there is just cause to do so, that the ends will indeed justify the means.
Well, and the New York Post today talked about a lot of things they found in his past. They say he retweeted posts against ICE agents, calling them monsters, denouncing the police, supporting Antifa. I mean, Andy, is that stuff enough? Because there are plenty of people who traffic in that kind of language on all sides of these issues.
Well, after these attacks, there's frequently a convenient excuse to blame mental illness. I think it's important to, in these discussions, to look at the ideologies of these individuals. Everybody's hyper-focused on, rightfully so, on the ideology of the El Paso shooter, on his far-right extremism. Right now, nobody's having discussion about the ideology that was laid out very clearly in the footprint on the social media of the shooter. I mean, the fact that he adopted the violent rhetoric of Antifa over a period of months now, referred to somebody who attacked our government facility as a martyr. Yeah. These are certainly red flags, and I support the resolutions that have been put forth by Senator Ted Cruz and Bill Cassidy in declaring Antifa as a domestic terrorist movement.
Yeah, and I think if we want to stop these shooters in the future, we do have to look for common threads in their past, regardless of where we think they're coming from. Cheryl and Andy, thank you both.
Thank you.
My pleasure.